I'm delighted to be here. I'm impressed with the attendance, with the nature of the people that are here. I'm struck, I'm in awe of the power and the ability that you possess. So let me reflect for a brief moment before I tell you what we're up to. We're accustomed to being a community. We are accustomed to getting along with one another. And somehow, in the midst of our community, we've become entrenched politically. Somehow, our political perspectives have interfered with our basic relations with one another. I start with that premise because what I am proposing for Baton Rouge requires a community. It requires us to move beyond labels, because they are so restrictive. They are so restrictive in our ability to agree on facts, our ability to agree upon basic foundational issues that we need to get busy to resolve. And I start with that premise because innovations are important. And I'm about innovations. I'm about introducing principles of getting along and how we treat one another. So at the 19th Judicial District Court, come next month in a few days, I will have been a trial judge in this parish for 30 years. 30 years. And I've seen it all. I've seen us start, I've seen us end, I've seen us start over. So I'm able to share with you a perspective of sitting behind a bench and seeing all types of conduct, regulating, balancing principles of right and wrong. So at the 19th JDC, we've been in the news a little bit lately. And why is that? Why has the judiciary been in the news? Well, lately there's been some complaining that somehow we're not effective. We're not doing the best job that perhaps our state leadership court should do. So I've decided that we're not going to be behind. I've decided that we're going to lead our state in innovative approaches to crime and criminal justice. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to use some of the tools that we've always used, and we're going to bring in some new tools. And I say that because I come from a perspective first of an engineer. Long ago, I acquired that skill set from Southern University Agricultural and Mechanical College, and when I got over to law school at LSU, I combined that science skill with a social science discipline called law. In the past 30 years, I've learned to refine that and make use of it. So today I want to talk about innovations at the 19th JDC, and these are necessary innovations. These are necessary for our safety, for our community. And the first intervention is about a model that we're calling the court intervention model. And it addresses dynamic change in the way we do business. In order for our court to be effective, we must first reflect on the traditional way we do business, and then how are we going to do business starting out the beginning of this year. The traditional legal model for criminal justice starts with law enforcement in the front, the first responders, followed by the second responders, the courts, followed by the third responders, the community corrections or institutional corrections. And it's a linear model. And we've always relied upon our sheriffs, our municipal police officers, to prevent and intervene with crime and criminality. And we've overburdened them with that responsibility. We've overburdened them with that challenge. So I've decided that the courts should not be second responders in our approach to crime and criminality. the court should be a co-partner and a first responder also. Now, how do we do this within our constitutional arrangement that the courts are independent and disciplinary different from that of law enforcement? Well, we collaborate, we coordinate, and we develop principles and policies that relate and that we coordinate to achieve the better outcome. So what we've done at the 19th JDC is to realize that we have crime rates that are disproportionately affecting segments of our community. Now, how we got there, why we got there, is left for another day. I'm about solutions right now, and I'm about making sure that the courts become first responders. Now, how are we going to do that? We've designed what we call a court intervention model. And the court intervention model deals with law enforcement, who are first responders, the courts, and then corrections. And the way we're going to do this is realizing that the community and the community issues are basically these factors: substance use disorder is a primary contributing factor to crime and criminality. Substance use. Second factor, mental health challenges. Mental health challenges. Driving people into the criminal justice system, a major factor in our community. Third factor that's major, economic poverty, lack of opportunities, major contributors. So if we were honest about confronting crime and criminality, we'd be fixing these problems right here. And then perhaps my job would be a little easier. The Rotary Club would focus on these ideas. How are we going to deal with a lot of people in our community using drugs? And you know it and I know it. So what are we going to do about it? You're going to let them all come through the criminal justice system and let me apply traditional criminal sector models, or are we going to change the way we approach that? So we have the mental health challenges. We all know that we did away with our largely institutional mental health hospital here years back. We decided that was the way we wanted to go, and now we're suffering the results of that decision. We need to change our model approach to that. And then we need to deal with the economic concerns of those that are disadvantaged. So at the 19th JDC, what we're going to do in our court intervention model, let's call it SIP. Let's sip on some water or something. Let's call it SIP. We're going to develop a pretrial services department. Pretrial. Pretrial means that these individuals who were arrested, they've not been brought to trial, they've not been adjudicated, not guilty or guilty, but they're in the criminal justice system, they're coming to our courts. So we're going to be proactive. And we're going to say that if you're arrested in Baton Rouge and you're booked in Baton Rouge jail, before you come out of that jail, we want a structuralized reentry program in place for you. There's no walk through the door, get a bond, and go back out, and you're under a criminal charge. We want some support for that model. We want some structure to make certain that you're safe if you're going to be let out on bond, and that also there's compliance with the rules and regulations of your bond. That's our first intervention. Let's develop a pretrial services department. Right now, we don't have that. When I release you on bond, I don't have the ability to track you. When I release you on bond, I don't see you until your motion date, which could be months down the line. And what's happening for a significant number of our people, you're recidivating. You're back into trouble. And then I've got to review your bond again. And then if I make the decision to let you back out constitutionally, I've got complaints from the community. Judge Johnson, you just got arrested and you back out. What are you going to do about it? Well, we're going to create a pretrial services department that will assure accountability with tracked compliance and days to report to court to show compliance on bail. Compliance on bail. That has to become institutionalized. We can no longer just let people go and assume that they're going to be successful. That's a misnomer. to allow our citizens to bond out and assume that they're going to be successful. And we've not engaged the very problem that got them there in the first place. So we've got to be interventionist. The second model we're going to create is called our Commissioner's Court. Commissioner's Court. What is a commissioner, Judge Johnson? Well, a commissioner is a juridical officer like I am, but they're not elected. And we have two of them at the 19th JDC. Last legislative period, we went before the body and they got authority to get two more. So starting January or sooner, we'll have 4 commissioners there. The problem with that is the legislature didn't want to fund those 2 commissioners. So guess what? We're going to do it. You're going to do it. So get ready to tell our elected executive chief that you want to support 2 additional commissioners on the 19th JDC. Now, when we have 4, here's what we're going to do. I've got a sheet in my hand. It's called the District Court Call-Out Sheet. Yesterday, it looks like 26 people were bonded out of jail. 26. Charges range from theft, entry on premises, violation of protective orders, domestic abuse battery, vehicular negligent injury, access device fraud, simple burglary, DWI, bunch of other crimes. Well, they're all being released on bond. So what we're going to do is have a commissioner's court that will be set up to process those individuals in a timely fashion, review their bail obligations, review their criminal history, review their social contacts with the community, and then make a bail decision with a structuralized reentry program and a compliance schedule that is preset to come before the court. Our commissioners will be trained to do that. We'll educate them appropriately and give them the task of doing that. Now, assigning them that task is going to free me up from doing that, which means I'm going to be available to try cases. I'm going to be available to try motions every day so that our case processing will be faster and quicker. The idea is to get quick justice and fast accountability. So that we're going to do with the Commissioner's Court. And then the third component we're adding, and I'm not sure how much time we have left, but the third component we're adding, tell me when I'm getting close, is called accountability courts. On the screen, we refer to those as specialty courts. Well, what are those, Judge Johnson? They're non-traditional courts, non-traditional. Now, why are we moving in this direction? Because science and social science tell us that that's required. I can no longer do regular court for the culture and the community that is coming into the criminal justice system. So I've got to change the way I approach. I've got to become very skilled in the discipline of law and in the discipline of social science. I remember attending the National Judicial College. One of my colleagues, we were in a class, he said, Judge Johnson, I'm not a social worker. And I sat next to him and I remained mum because I said, well, what the world are we then? If not social workers, we just wear a black robe, but we're social workers. So we're going to have to learn to put on a white robe underneath the black robe in order to be effective, So specialized courts is the way we're going to go. And when I say specialized courts, here's some of the types. A few years back, many years back, we started what was called the first specialized court in the state of Louisiana. It was called for some of you might remember, the Fast Track Felony Drug Court, Felony Drug Prosecution Court, first specialty court, not created by the legislature, by your judges. And what did we do? We responded to what was going on in our community, which was the influx of the drug culture. So we designed a specialized fast-track drug court to prosecute felony trafficking of drugs in our community so that judges would be ready to deal with it. And I was the last judge on that court. And a few years later, we changed that model from a fast-track felony prosecution court to a felony drug treatment court. We moved from prosecution to treatment. So what we're doing now is treating those citizens who are coming into the criminal justice system because of addiction. And I'll say this for those of us who may not want to hear it. We cannot lock up all the addicted people we have in this parish. I want to give you the data. Look at the coroner's data and look at what's going on. drug usage is significant, and it's driving people in the criminal justice system. So we've got to be honest about our data and analyze that data and design plans to deal with it. So the first court that we're dealing with on the specialty courts, the accountability courts, is our drug court. It's now called the recovery court, and Judge Jordan is heading that up. Here's what else we've done at the 19th JDC. We moved from our drug treatment court to a pretrial drug treatment court, a pretrial court. All of our models have been post-adjudication. What do I mean when I say that? That means you've been found guilty or you plead guilty, and you're on probation, and the judge is supervising your recovery through that program. Well, we invented a pretrial program for those that are not going to be found guilty, who would like to get interventions and treatment, who would like to get support to get off of the substances. And that is the second intervention court, called the pretrial intervention court. And I see Chris Sonka here, who's collaborating with us with CJCC. That's an inspiration model that some of you may have become familiar with. So that is the second program that we're operating in terms of specialization. The third one is going to come on, well, the third one is the ReEntry. Let me talk about that one. ReEntry court. Well, what is that? That is a court where we have sent people to prison. We've sent mostly men to the state penitentiary at Angola. They have sentences of 7 to 10, perhaps 12 years to do. And they're out there at that dormitory on campus. They go to a specialized dormitory at Angola. And they're housed in that dormitory, and their mission is to get out of prison sooner. And we've set up a pattern and a course of action that they can earn their way out sooner. And so this is what we tell them. If you go into this institution, you get a skill set, you get a trade, the employers will hire you in the state of Louisiana. And so they're coming out directly into what's called ReEntry. And that ReEntry court is handled by Judge Crafassi, and we'll be receiving our first individuals coming out of the state penitentiary coming into the court's ReEntry program. That's our third specialty court. The fourth one is just beginning to start. You've heard of something about it. It's our Veterans Treatment Court. We're going to announce that next week. And why do we have a Veterans Treatment Court? Because we need a specialized treatment court for the drugs that our veterans have been exposed to and the things that they're dealing with. So that becomes our fourth specialty court. And then the last one that's on the map right now that's actually been authorized, and we got that through the legislature, is our domestic violence court. Domestic violence. And I'll tell you this, when I look at this sheet, 25% of the persons that are arrested every day are domestic-related incidents. 25%, 1/4 of everybody coming into jail is domestic relations. Somehow we don't know how to get along with somebody we say we love. And it's coming directly into the criminal justice system. So we're going to design a special model, twofold model. One is the court, and it's going to be structuralized and specialized treatment for this culture of domestic relation problems that we have. The second component is going to be this. If you're released on bond for a domestic offense, and the factors indicate that you may be dangerous to reoffend, but you must be released on bail, then we're going to institute a system where we're going to make sure that we know where you are 24/7. And it's not going to be left up to a vendor, a private intervention, to make certain of that. We're going to have connection with our law enforcement and with our courts to make sure we can validate where you are 24/7. And that is our new program that we're promoting. Hopefully we'll be before the council in a week or two and get that support for that model. So the second thing I want you to support is the domestic violence location monitoring program, and that becomes our third component. Basically, that's where we are with the 19th JDC. Some of the slides I had prepared, I don't think I'll get to them, and I'm looking through my notes to make sure I don't leave anything out that I want to make certain of. But I think that's it. I want to express appreciation again, and I think these innovative approaches will provide for a safer community, but not only a safer community, a community that is concerned about rehabilitation. And I want to leave with this statement here about this word rehabilitation. I was sentencing a young man, and I had given him a chance to rehabilitate himself. And as I watched and observed him, I realized that the problem was not rehabilitation. The problem was habilitation. I realized that his problem was not that he was not retreaded. He had never been treaded from the start. So how am I going to retrofit something that was somehow not appropriately seasoned in the first place? So with that statement, I want to ask us to, let's think out of the box. Let's go back and start basic social skill sets and relational building. And I think that if we start there in another generation, we won't look back and say we failed our young people because we did not fully instill the values that we want them to replicate. And then I won't be forced to either send them away to prison or attempt to make some retrofit of the failure that we did not instill the basic values that we want them to have. So that's it in a nutshell. I want to thank you for giving me a brief moment to come talk to you. And I've got a task this afternoon I've got to go prepare for tomorrow, but I thank you very kindly. All right, I'm told the next segment is to throw the ball to you, and I do that a lot. So the word in court is called I tender. So I tender to you for your opportunity to ask me about criminal justice, crime, come on, and anything you think is relevant.
Yes, sir. In some jurisdictions in the United States now, they are eliminating cash bonds. How would that work, and is that feasible for our community?
Actually, the value of a cash bond, let's talk about a cash bond. What is the purpose of a cash bond? It's to assure one or two things. Either if you cannot make it, you stay in jail. So the purpose of a cash bond is somehow to relate to your ability to get out of jail. All right, so the old school model was this. If I didn't want you out of jail, I'd set your bond high. Simple as that. So if I didn't want you out, I'd put $1 million, or I'd say no bond. Well, the Constitution says in most instances, people must be bailed out. They're presumed innocent. Now, that's our Constitution. We believe in the rule of law, and I must uphold the rule of law. So if the Constitution tells me that I cannot use monetary amount for your freedom, then what else is left? Then I must look at the factors that relate to your conduct and the alleged crime and the proof. So what we're doing with this new model, we're going to bring in what we call risk assessments. So that's a new way of doing business. I don't have to control you with $1. I can control you with risk assessment. What is that? Well, that is a way of looking at you. Are you a risk to my community, to our community, if I let you out of jail? And if you are, then no, you don't get out. And I look at factors. So it becomes that simple. And I look at your relationship to the community. I look at your past history. I look at the nature of the new crime you're charged with. And all those are identifiers and markers as to where and what I should do with your release. So here's a new territory. Here's a new world. We're going to find ways that we don't need iron bars. We need technological bars. Listen to what I'm saying. The new world, how do we control and regulate public safety? If the iron bars lock too many of us up, then what are we going to use? We got to use technology. We've got to learn to transition to powerful tools that can keep us safe or safer than the iron bars. I call them technological bars, and we're going to have to invest in that direction, go in that direction. I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but cash bail is some states are removing it altogether, and they're going with risk assessments, and then we're framing your release factors. So if I believe that you're too risky, you don't get out. Simple as that. If I believe that you're a high risk, but you must get out, then I need to structure your reentry so that the community is safe from you and the risk is low. So that is what we're moving toward, and we're going to design that. We're going to test that and validate it, and we're going to come back and tell you, did it work or not? So you can have some support for it, or we can change our methods. Yes, sir.
Hello, sir. Hello, Judge. So I'm a PhD in law school, social science. So what do you believe, because we're in law school, we don't have one class that is social science related. Do you think there's a future here where law finally merges into social science and analytics?
Yes. The answer is yes. What I realized after studying law and going to the Judicial College was this. I propose that as students of law, that the acquisition of a law degree is no longer should be no longer the requisite to become a judge. That should not be the level of qualification, a law license, and the number of years in service. I believe you should have social science disciplinary education. That's what I proposed in my last doctoral dissertation, that I'm inadequate if I only practice law and do not practice social science as a tool to use to be effective. And that's what's lacking in our juridical system, is the lack of social science education. You should want to acquire multidisciplinary education, dual degrees, multi-degrees, in order to be effective in your discipline. That's what I would recommend to the law student body, that students that are here. Okay? Otherwise I'll. Okay. Yes.
What about drug dealers? How do they get involved in any of these programs?
The drug dealers fundamentally are different. All right, so here's what we do. From a legal standpoint and from a legislative standpoint, this is what we're doing. We're saying those that are trafficking drugs don't qualify. That's what we've said. If you're trafficking drugs in our community, you don't qualify for any of these programs. So should we change that or not? Are they substance users, or they're just trafficking? If they're substance users, then perhaps. But if they're just trafficking drugs and undermining our culture, then we should be very tough. We should be very tough, because they're undermining everything we're doing, and they have no social value about a community. All they want is a dollar bill. All they want is money. And that's all they care about, and that's all they live for. And that's not the way we want our community to exist. So the drug traffickers should be dealt with harshly. Okay?